I am Julia Weatherspoon. I will be your moderator for the evening, and we are joined by three very esteemed guests. We are here because we want to talk about designing for BIPOC communities and what that means. We will talk about concrete steps to achieving equity in architecture, unbuilding racism, and designing intentionally for BIPOC communities. And we just want to take a moment to say that this is a safe space. We know that everyone has differing levels of understanding or knowledge on this topic. So we want to make sure that everyone feels safe in any kind of comment or question that may arise in this conversation. I want to provide space to talk about the work that Deanna is doing, and then also the work that Lisa and Rosa are doing within their respective firms. So my first question is more geared toward Lisa and Rosa a little bit, but how are larger organizations or design firms, architecture firms, starting to look at core systems and initiatives like Deanna's and start to design more around building for BIPOC communities? And we can maybe start with Rosa if you'd like.
Sure, thank you so much. So deeply inspired by Deanna's work, designing justice, designing spaces these many years. And I take a lot from your playbook, albeit at a large firm, but at a more grassroots scale in my small, humble studio. So Julia is one of the members of our higher ed studio. And we chose to focus on vulnerable student populations, Black and Brown students, Indigenous students, et cetera, especially in the practice of STEM and STEAM education. And right now we are on our, I believe, 5th STEAM project, specifically channeling programs that support Black and Brown STEM, STEAM professionals as they graduate. So it's a holistic system. We start with the design process, as you had mentioned, where we listen to the students. We intentionally build trust. We move at the speed of trust. At first, nobody wanted to come to the event. You have to acknowledge that they're taking busy time out of their schedules. So food being a great motivator, pizza, right? So we've been doing that pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, building that trust and listening to students. And then we do the sketches with them, and then we show it back to them in the design progress. And they actually didn't believe that we were going to listen to them, so you have to go back and show them, like, see that sleeping little nook you wanted, see that little isolation space you wanted, the phone booth, so you could get away from people. Intentional space, because a lot of these students statistically are marginalized and potentially being homeless because they're paying for their education and they're incurring student debt. So they could be sleeping in the cars. And that third space, that amenity space that everybody talks about, that's actually a necessity space. And you've talked about radical imagination. I think we should just add the word radical in front of many of our words. Radical welcome, beyond inclusive. Let's go beyond inclusive. Let's talk about belonging, but let's talk about it in a way that's radically welcoming. So if you see somebody who feels like they're a little shy, tell them to come, grab them, come, tell them that they are here, they belong. And that's the message we try to instill with the students that we engage with. We're really excited about the work we're doing in Humboldt. I have to talk to you about that because we're at Cal Poly Humboldt right now, and we're in the process of meeting with each of the student groups where they are. So we asked them to come to our meeting. They didn't want to come to our meeting. They're too busy. They're homeless. They're dealing with all these crisis trauma things. We're actually going to them where they are with their membership groups, the Indigenous Students Group, ITEP, the Black student group called Umoja, El Central. So we're literally taking the time, spending the extra time to go and meet with these students to build the trust. And I think everybody has to realize that, if they didn't come to your engagement meeting, it's not because they didn't want to, they can't, because they're literally trying to survive. So anyway, sorry, I digress.
Do not apologize. All of these are gems. And I heard a few phrases there: moving at the speed of trust, going to where people are. Those were some great points. And Lisa, would you like to just chat a little bit about maybe what Gensler's up to?
I was thinking that's a really cool phrase, radical welcome. I think I'll start with something here and then kind of step back with things we're doing at the firm level. So here in San Francisco, so not Oakland, but in San Francisco, we are working with the city to kind of do a review of their planning process. Because the city has said, we think our process might not be equitable, and so that's a super exciting project to kind of, it is, I don't know what's slower than the speed of trust, but it's kind of that speed. Because it is slow and deliberate with them around like what to do. But I think it's super interesting that they've acknowledged that the system, which kind of holds it all together, isn't equitable. And so let's think about it. So that's a super interesting thing to be working on. And that's a pretty diverse team working on that. I think beyond that, I was thinking when Deanna was showing all these things that it feels like everyone in this room knows about this work because it's what people do. But I think one huge thing that Gensler's doing is not everyone knows these stories and not everyone kind of understands that we had a role in this. And so the institute that Julia mentioned, Equity in the Built Environment, that is kind of cataloging lots of stories around Black voices in healthcare, disparate outcomes there, BIPOC experience in education, around urban planning things. And so there's 3 years now of this institute that's really looking at a number of ways of the ways we've affected our built environment. And I think the groundwork for that is that we have colleagues and partners and friends who have no idea that we've been part of this, that there's a kind of idea that Brown and Black communities wanted it that way, and that was their choice. So I think that's been a really large piece of our work, is just kind of telling these stories, cataloging them, and like how they then connect to the next steps. And actually, this event actually comes from a project that Tori's doing, which is part of the Institute, and him looking at restorative justice. So I think that's a bit of what we're doing.
Thank you. And you all have been very busy, so we very much appreciate the work that is being done.